Today we're in Matsue and the surrounding areas. We'll visit a miniature Mount Fuji, the historic Matsue Castle, be served a meal by a friendly robotic waiter, get a surprise at the Daisen Milk Village, and walk through the most incredible sand sculptures in the world at the Tottori Sand Museum. Matsue is a mid-sized city located on the northwestern coast of Japan, about 2.5 hours north of Okayama. It sits on the shores of Lake Shinji and is a popular spot for watching the sunsets over the enormous 30 square mile lake. Simply stunning. The historic area of town is anchored by the Matsue Castle Park, surrounded by numerous classic Edo-style buildings and museums, so we start our visit here. Most castles in Japan are reproductions because so many of them were destroyed during World War II or simply fell victim to time and fires. The result being that there are only 12 original castles remaining in all Japan, and Matsue Castle is one of them. This makes a visit here all the more enjoyable. When compared to others such as Hiroshima Castle, which is impressive on the outside but much less so on the inside as you see here, you will really appreciate what Matsue Castle offers. The interior of the lower levels are dark and the floors creak underfoot. Here you'll find the original foundations and supports of the castle. And when I say centuries ago, I mean the early 1600s. The stairs are steep and narrow, designed that way to make it easier to defend, but harder for tourists like us. And if you have knee problems, well, you're probably out of luck because there is no elevator. Sorry. Continuing upward, higher into the castle, you'll see historic exhibits from ages past, and eventually cap it all off with the impressive view from up on top. Though not very large in size, the castle is nonetheless impressive. The stone walls and gate are all original with the corner towers overlooking the moat. A great way to gain a different perspective is to take the Horkawa sightseeing boat. This tour lasts about an hour, winding through the moat and canals around the castle. A unique thing about this tour is that there are no seats. You sit on the floor, and 5 times during the tour, the roof of the boat is lowered in order to clear several of the bridges under which you'll pass. This results in a lot of laughs and giggles as the guests all lean over and lay down as the boat is literally passing under the bridges with only inches to spare. The guides speak only Japanese, but will play an English language recording throughout the tour, helping those of us who don't speak Japanese. This is definitely a fun way to add a different dimension to your visit to Matsue Castle. To get the most out of your visit to Matsue, we recommend getting a rental car. Now don't be hesitant about driving in Japan. Obtaining a rental is easily done online, and the pickup is always quick and efficient. Just have your passport and international driver's license and follow the other motorists. So for our next stop, we drive about 45 minutes to Mount Daisen. At nearly 6,000 feet, Mount Daisen is the tallest peak in the region and generally considered the third most significant mountain in Japan. From the west side, it bears a striking resemblance to Mount Fuji, especially when snow is on the top. During our drive, we stopped at the Kagekake Pass rest area. When we arrived, the mountain was shrouded in clouds and mist, but as we waited, it quickly cleared up for some beautiful views. We've driven about 50 minutes north of Matsue, where we're staying, to Mount Daisen. Mount Daisen is over 5,700 feet high. It sits overlooking the Sea of Japan, and it's one of the most important mountains in all of Japan. Now, unfortunately, if you want to climb it, you can't go all the way to the top because some of the slopes are at risk of failure after the year 2000 Tottori earthquake. But that's no risk of us. We drove up here comfortably instead. After driving back down the mountain, Josephine spotted something interesting on the map, so rather than turning left, we went right, and we're so glad we did. And when you make the drive up to Mount Daisen, behind me over here at 5,700 some feet, in addition to that, you can take a stop at the Daisen farmhouse of milk right here. They have 2 restaurants, everything milk related, cheeses, ice cream, on and on and on it goes. And you get a phenomenal view of the Sea of Japan off in the distance. It sits at the base of Mount Daisen, and with the cows in the foreground, you can't help but relax and enjoy the scenery. So we went inside and purchased our requisite soft-serve, freshly made ice cream and enjoyed ourselves in the sunshine with a slight breeze. After getting refreshed at the Milk Village, we drove to the Adachi Museum of Art and Gardens. This is another off-the-beaten-path kind of place that is largely free of foreign tourists, but definitely worth the visit. Widely recognized as one of the most beautiful gardens in Japan, This is the work of one man's love for gardens and fine Japanese art, Adachi Zenko. The gardens have won numerous awards, including being named #1 garden in Japan by the Journal of Japanese Gardening, and you'll see why. The presentation of the garden is different in that with only limited exceptions, you do not actually walk through the garden itself. Instead, you view much of it from viewing galleries with floor-to-ceiling glass walls so that you can take in the scenery in air-conditioned comfort while sitting down. It's definitely a slightly different experience from most gardens, but actually quite nice in some respects, especially in the heat of summer, but perhaps more so in that you can enjoy the full vista without it being interrupted by others walking through the scenery and getting into your photo. However, there are a couple of spots within the grounds where you can step outside and immerse yourself in the garden as you walk from building to building. There are two options for dining, including the Cafe Midori and Tea House Jurakuan, with its glass walls overlooking the peaceful pond garden. Both looked inviting, but we were looking for something a little more robust and less fancy. As it turns out, next door was the recently opened Tsukinawa restaurant. It had a very casual atmosphere, and we enjoyed delicious tempura and udon, although its specialty is that of cold soba noodles, as evidenced by the giant zaru, or basket-type implement used to rinse buckwheat soba noodles. Now, when you're in the area visiting Mount Daisen, as you see here, you come down the mountain and you are suddenly met by this brutalist concrete architectural building. It's amazing that it pops up out of nowhere. This is the Shoji Ueda Museum of Photography. On this day, we didn't go inside. It wasn't expected, but if you Google the name, you'll see that it is a very minimalist structure within. If you're a photography junkie, then it may be just for you. If not, then you might skip it. But the fact that this building just pops out of nowhere in such a rural setting goes to show how much more of Japan you can see when you rent a car. However, another museum that definitely grabbed our attention is the Tottori Sand Museum. It was mind-blowing. Located just outside the coastal town of Tottori, famous for the largest sand dunes in Japan. Yes, this is not a desert, but the shores of Japan. These are enormous sand dunes. The Tottori Sand Museum features more than a dozen unique works of sculpture, all made from two ingredients, sand and water. Every year, the museum invites more than a dozen internationally known sand sculptors to create sculptures based on the year's theme. The themes always focus on specific countries or localized geographies, and in 2024, the theme is France, and the unique sculptures depicting icons from French history, starting in the late Middle Ages through the roaring 20s and 30s. There are knights in armor, a 15-foot tall reproduction of Notre Dame Cathedral, including its famous hunchback Quasimodo, the facade of Versailles, the coronation of Napoleon, the French Revolution, and many other recognizable scenes. It's simply jaw-dropping. Now bear this in mind, the exhibits are not up all year long, so you must check the website link in the description in this video. They are generally available about 7 to 8 months of the year. At the end of that period, they are destroyed and the sand is recast for the following year's exhibition. This is truly a unique off-the-beaten-path location in Japan, and it's exactly what we here at Uncharted Japan try to showcase. So if you're enjoying this video, please click the like and subscribe buttons below and be sure to leave a comment. We can't make these videos without your feedback and letting the YouTube genie know that we're doing something right. It's free and you won't be put on any mailing list, so do it now. We'd appreciate the vote of confidence and we'll continue making more videos. We ended the day with a meal back in town served by a surprise waiter. With a push of the button and a catchy tune playing, it rolled down the aisle, and we enjoyed watching the reactions of the other patrons as the quirky little robot delivered the meals to their table. It wasn't much help with describing the food or chit-chat, but the question is, did they leave a good tip? Be sure to watch Yokohama Part 2. There's so much to see that we couldn't include it all in one video. We'll walk through the historic foreigners' neighborhood featuring homes and gardens from the late 1800s. Go aboard the Nippon Maru, a classic training vessel permanently docked at the waterfront. Ride the Yokohama air cabin over that waterfront and dive into the cutest bear ice cream dessert you've ever seen in your life. Until next time, sayonara!